me have a quick look here. So, looking within the manual. Now, this is one manual. Understand, no single Islamic law manual contains everything. Often there are specialized manuals, one on marriage, one on prayer, one on fasting. They'll have a little bit of everything. The largest and most complete, to my knowledge, is the Hidayah in the Hanafi school of fiqh. This manual is special though. This one has a little bit of everything. It is a single volume that compiles a little bit of everything. It compares with other schools, and it has the most sound rulings of those schools presented for you as a compendium. So there's no other Sharia manual like this in the world that I know of. So I've looked up the word Gnos, Gnos. We have Gnosis mentioned 18 times, Gnostic 5 times, Gnostics plural 3 times, and Gnostics with an apostrophe 1 time. So that's more than 20 references, almost 30 references. So, for instance, if you're looking at Gnosis within Islam, he writes, the Sheikh al-Akbar writes, there's the spirit, there is the spiritual station of annihilation in Gnostic vision. In other words, there are multiple spiritual stations. So this is a part of a ritual series of incantations and exercises you do to free yourself from your physical mind and body and to enter into the throne room of Allah. So
Wow,
it's a
okay.
series of occult magical practices so that you can have Gnostic vision. That's okay.
So this is like
Um,
Islam's version of like almost like transcendental meditation to get the union with God, if you will.
they
Oh,
claim so. The Islamic scholars claim that they have the true gnosis. That everyone who came before was just lost or faking it or didn't find the truth. These guys have the true knowledge, the gnosis, and this is in the classical sense of what we know as the gnosis from the Gnostics,
okay.
right? So they speak of the harm of stopping at the first traces of gnosis. You have to push through, right? So others claim to have attained to gnosis and contemplative knowledge of the divine, to have passed through spiritual stations and states, and to have reached nearness to Allah. Others have, but those guys are faking it. We as the Islamic scholars, we as the Muslims, we've really reached it. Our hearts are aflame with the love of Allah Most High, and we have attained to gnosis. We found the true path. So the true
Okay.
knowledge, knowledge of the Gnostics, we have found it.
So not Buddha, not anybody else, they found the real truth.
Correct. Okay, but this is a longer story, but uh, let me do a very short summary then. So Islam has 4 levels and 2 divisions. The 2 divisions are the Sharia, which is the law, which is to obey the law, right? It's illegal. That's really just a legal issue. Just do what you're told. Then the other side of it is called the Hakika, the knowledge, which is knowing the truth,
Hmm.
right? So you as a lay Muslim, you follow the Sharia, you do what you're told, but you're also at the bottom of the stack. Now the other side, the Hakika, this is only open to the most highly knowledgeable, most highly spiritual of the Islamic imams. Those imams all happen to be the Sufis. So the highest level of development within Islam is specific and exclusive to the Sufis. Now, then you've got 4 levels of knowledge, right? And notice all the saints in Islam are all Sufis,
Yeah, true.
right? When they speak of saints in Islam, they're all Sufis. So your lowest level of knowledge in Islam, the very lowest level, and don't forget, the Quran is at this level. So the Quran is the lowest level of knowledge. So are the Hadith at this level. It's called the you have the Ibara, which is the lowest literal level. Then you have the Ishara, the level of the Imams. Then you have the Lataif, and then you have the Akaik, right? So you have the 4 levels. So the
Okay.
Ibada is where the lay Muslim is, where he simply just knows the literal meaning and he obeys. Then your Imams have what they call the allusions, what is implied, what is not necessarily stated. Then the Lataif is the understanding of the hidden reality, right?
Okay.
This is an understanding of the subtle truths, but you have to have this training and this all transcendental meditation, as you say, to understand that. And the final level is the Akaik. These last 2 levels are only open to the Sufis and to the saints. So they effectively become as as gifted as the prophets. They become like the prophets, and then they are open to the secrets of Allah. They then achieve the secret knowledge. So they speak of the Gnostic in his first states is affected by the impact, right? And they speak of the Gnostic's spiritual will exalted above all else because they are Gnostics. His spiritual will is exalted above all else, right? And then they speak here of someone who has reached the level of those to whom the unseen is exposed, the ghaib is exposed. And
Yeah,
we
so the
have
veil, they can
Gnostic,
see beyond that veil that most of us are not
correct.
privy to. Right.
Yes. The ghaib is mentioned 15 or 16 times in the Quran, and it refers to the occult, the unseen. right? We have Gnostic insight. They have special knowledge. You enter through the door of Gnosis, which is the secret knowledge, right? So they have what they worship. Okay, let me finish this since we're on the Sharia. So to worship in Islam, there are different levels of worship, right? But the minimum that is required. So it says here, the perfection of faith, which is called ihsan. The perfection of faith is to adore Allah as if you see Him. And if you see Him not, He nevertheless sees you. Fine and well.
That's the
Okay.
omniscience, yeah.
But now, so scholars mention that there are three spiritual stations a servant may have in his worship. Okay.
Hmm.
So, one, you have to worship in a way that fulfills the obligations of Islam by observing it, all its conditions and integrals. These are legal conditions. These are rules, right?
Yeah.
This is part of the
Actual
law. Let me
rules,
just
yeah.
right. So one, you must also, and then secondly, to do this while immersed in the sea of Gnostic inspiration, the secret knowledge, the gnosis, the mukashafa, right? And then thirdly, to worship as mentioned above, okay, though aware, okay, well, let's just, okay, then they mention to worship as mentioned above, the mainly way that Allah sees one, okay? So you eventually you get into direct contact with Allah. This is a summary, right? All
Hmm.
three of these are of the perfection of faith, ihsan, but the perfection required for the validity of worship is only the first. In other words, just follow the rules, do as you are told, obey.
Yeah.
Perfection in the latter senses is the mark of the elect and not possible for many.
Wow, okay, so
This is
that's just
only for
confirming
the
that
elite.
hidden knowledge amongst the highest Sufi level.
Correct.
Okay, so Lloyd, a couple of things because this is really fascinating for me as well, especially coming from. So just so I've understood this correctly, so people like me who were just once upon a time a normal, supposedly believing Muslim, right, who was born into it and accepted it as the truth. I form part of the Ibara. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So I am therefore allowed access to the Quran and the
And
Sunnah,
some
right?
hadith.
And some Hadith,
Some
right?
hadith. And the tafsir is only allowed to you in the company of an imam who will interpret it for you.
Right, exactly. That's why the Muslim emphasis is always on like, well, we don't know, the scholars know, the Imam knows. I can't literally they are like, this is
Have you
beyond
asked a
my
scholar?
yeah.
Have you
No, I
consulted a scholar?
yeah, exactly. That's literally their go-to. But so that's really interesting because what so from where I'm standing, I thought, and this is because I might be very ignorant in this, but I literally thought, for example, living in Saudi and seeing like Wahhabi Saudi like Islam play out there, and there's a huge concept there where even the monarchy is not above the ulema, right? The religious elite, the ruling scholars. But then, in my understanding, Sufism, like they completely shun away from the idea of saints and like even saint worship or following the methods that the saints used. And so Sufism branched off entirely. But according to this like chain of command that you're saying almost, the top of those like scholarly circles are in fact Sufis essentially as like Freemasons of some kind or
Yeah.
and
They claim to be
Gnostics.
the Sufis do claim to be the original Freemasons, and they claim to have founded Freemasonry in Europe.
Oh, okay. Wow. So I need to look into like how Sufism still manifests itself then. So are these scholars at the top then? Would it be right to say that they are heavily influenced by Sufism, but that just doesn't trickle down and we don't see it? Or
Look, you need to understand Sharia is technically a secret.
okay.
Okay? I have for 2 years now, more than 2 years, every single person who ever replies to me, who comments to me on my channel, any channel, whatever, I ask them, come with me live. Let us simply read through the Sharia together. We'll take a handful of fiqh manuals and we'll just read them. We'll read on apostasy, on whether or not it's legal to marry little girls or have sex with little children,
Yeah.
prepubescent sex. Let's read through the law. What do your imams say? What's in the ijma? What do Hanafi, Shafi, Maliki, Hanbali, what do they say? I have not had one person accept, not one, because it's illegal. For a Muslim to talk about the Sharia would be to reveal a weakness and a secret of Islam, and it would be treason, and that is punishable by death.
Wow, okay, yeah. And just because you mentioned the word treason there as well, when I actually looked into the word for apostasy or irtida in Arabic, is like actually akin to the word treason. So even the act of leaving Islam is like akin to treason, which just
Reason.
really emphasized for me the political nature of Islam as opposed to it being like a religious spiritualistic belief system.
Ru- That's very good. Actually, I'm going to look up that word in a minute in the Encyclopedia of Islam, but notice the word dawah, right? So what happens is because we're Westerners, we understand the world in a certain way. We have certain definitions. Hey, Thunderous, welcome, man. So what happens is we see things through our perspective, our Western lens, right? However, they have a completely different meaning of that word. So the word dawah, we think of it as evangelization. It has nothing to do with evangelization. It is a completely
Okay.
different concept. Dawah is an entirely secular word. Yes, it can mean call. It can mean invitation. Let me show an example of dawah. Hey, Thunderous, do you want to come over and have a beer tomorrow night and get drunk? I'm gonna fry some steaks. Come on over. Let's have a couple of beers and just get sloshed. What do you say, buddy? That's dawah. That's a call. That's an invitation. That is not an evangelization. That's an entirely secular usage of the word.
Right.
Properly speaking, dawah means propaganda, and it means pretension, to pretend. Okay? Dawah is propaganda for a member of the Prophet's family and propaganda for the Imam.
Yeah.
If you go into the Encyclopedia of Islam and you look up the usage of dawah, it is propaganda. It is state propaganda.
Hmm. And that's exactly what we see. Okay, so do these Dawa, I mean, does the Dawa community, would they know these trade secrets and understand exactly the root of the way that they are
Probably
using
not.
Dawa and the way they're selling it to Western minds?
Probably not. No.
Okay.
No. So
Marcus here has made a really good point, just saying, so it's much like cults and secret societies. There are hidden tiers of understanding, and they strictly gatekeep it.
yeah,
And
yeah.
Qasim saying that was a great interpretation of Dawa.
Okay, yeah. So hopefully does that answer your question? We can get back to the presentation. But if you
Yes,
have questions,
yes,
please
thank
ask.
you. No, that's fine. I just, as soon as you said it, I really had to kind of see for myself the link to Gnosticism or even just the reference and mention of it within the Islamic Sharia or fiqh. So thank you for that. That was very eye-opening.